Good evening, ladies and gents. The Fallout Bar is in session here at Online Darts as we look back at the top half of the group of the Grand Slam of Darts. My name is Jack Garwood. Pleasure to be here with you guys, joined by Mr. Dan Simpson and Carwin. Dan, feels strange seeing you like this. It was only 48 hours ago that we were doing this in person.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so very long that you were stood in this very room with me, which is very rare that we get you up this end of the country for a proper in-person social. But I tell you what, it's been a busy old week, hasn't it?
I mean, look, I'm not really one to talk, but unless the Northeast has major upgrades to its internet infrastructure, I won't be revisiting again because it was a disaster a weekend in some regard. I now know how you feel when you're streaming. Carwin, how are we doing, buddy? Thanks for hopping on.
No problem. Yeah, it's good. It's good to join you lads. I feel like I've missed out not being up in the northeast, but having lived in West Wales, I'm more than familiar with internet issues, and I'm glad to be closer to civilization in Cardiff now.
I was going to say, imagine having that accent and having the best internet connection out of the three of us.
No chance. No chance.
Good evening, chat room. Hope you are all well. David says, hello, lads. Dan, how are we looking on merch? Christmas is coming. Please tell me there'll be hats.
We're looking very...
This weekend. The internet wasn't good enough. Basically,
we are looking...
give us some bank details, and then we can get going. Please,
the short answer is we're virtually there.
Yeah.
If the internet connection had have been better at the venue for the World Seniors where we all gathered this weekend, then there's a decent chance we would have maybe launched this week. Because it wasn't, then we probably need another week of pulling some bits and bobs together. But we are very, very hopeful that we'll be able to launch in the next 7 to 10 days, allowing people to get deliveries in time for Christmas. That is the current working period.
Indeed. Richard's in. He says, even though any real drama shouldn't have been enough a match, we'll get to that very, very shortly. Joe says, evening. Good to have a recap this evening. Yeah, apologies weren't here this weekend. Obviously, manpower was a little bit down, given the fact that Dan and I were both in Sunderland covering the seniors. Phil was there on the Friday and then straight to the Grand Slam on Saturday. But the plan is quite simple. What we've decided is we could have maybe snuck a show on last night, but today we're just going to review the top half. We're going to review Groups A, B, C, and D. That's it. We're not going to look ahead to the knockout stages of that. We're not going to look ahead to the final group games in the other half of the draw. We're literally going to review everything that's happened in Groups A to D so far in the Grand Slam of Darts. So all 6 matches from all 4 groups. We're going to break them down night by night, session by session. This is what the standings were. This is what it meant for tonight. And this is what the outcome was and our take on that. That's what you're getting from us tonight. Tomorrow, we're going to do exactly the same, but with the other half of the draw. So we're going to do E, F, G, and H tomorrow. And then from Wednesday, we'll resume our normal style of show, where basically every game's a knockout. We can do some predictions within there, but we're not going to do that this evening because this could be quite a lengthy show anyway. So I hope that's okay with everybody watching along at home. That includes Patrick, who says evening, lads. Darren says evening. Shelty says evening, as does Maliki. Connor says evening, lads. Littler is back, never in doubt. We'll get to him tomorrow night. This is much like the P word. This is a Littler free zone on Monday night. And James says, good evening. Right, lads, let's crack straight on with it into Group A. And we go all the way back to Saturday evening, I think it was, where they moved this group from its natural position where the other 3 were, which I'm still a little bit annoyed about. Yes, he's the world champion. Yes, you can argue he deserves to be in prime time. But if that's the case, invert everybody. Moving one group did not sit right with me at all, because now Group H have played the first game on Sunday afternoon session at one point. That was their slot yesterday, and now they don't play again until last on Tuesday. That's not right for me. TV, don't care. Do it fairly. But we start with Group A, and we start with 2 massive, massive upsets, gents. If you told me at the start of this campaign that both James Wade and Luke Humphries were going to lose opening night to Mickey Mansel and Roby John Rodriguez, I'd have laughed you out the building. But they both did. Both playing pretty well as well. Wade over the 100 average, 103. Humphries 97 in his, but both going down 5-3. Mickey Mansell beating James Wade and Roby John Rodriguez beating Luke Humphries down.
Yeah, and I mean, both of these matches essentially come down to doubles. Really, that's all it is. Because whilst Luke Humphries took out that huge 164, like beautiful, that's what Luke Humphries does. Averaging 97 and a half, he's not shy of 100, but Roby John Rodriguez was 71% on his doubles, 5 out of 7. Virtually every time he got a shot at a double, he took it out. And against anyone in the world, no matter how they're playing, if you are hitting 5 out of 7 doubles, then you are going to push them very, very far. And if they're not absolutely at it, then you're going to have them. And by the exact same token, is even with James Wade averaging 103, Mickey Mansel's he's gone one better, and he's gone 5 from 6 instead of 5 from 7, 83.3%. And that the double stats for both, Wade down at 23%, Humphries at 30, and really the story of those games were that over the course of the legs that we saw, the scoring phase of the game, Humphries and Wade were the better players. But Roby John and Mickey Mansel just took every opportunity that came to them and were absolutely clinical. It was two very, very impressive performances. And yes, you could argue that, James and Luke could feel a little hard done by outplaying their opponents and getting beat. But you win darts matches by hitting doubles. And that's what their opponents both did in a much, much better fashion than they did. So yes, upsets, but I don't think either of them can have too much to really complain about, because Luke's had 10 darts at a double in that match and James has had 13. So they have both created, virtually or certainly considerably more opportunities than their opponents. They just didn't take them.
Indeed. Carwin, I'm going early with this one because it's just the first game we're talking about. But is this the perils of this format? It is such a short race. I know it's only a leg shorter to win than they typically play on the Pro Tour, but it does feel that much shorter. Like earlier this evening, Ross Smith was 3-0 up with a leg with one break, and Connor Scott's facing all sorts of trouble. We'll get to that, but the perils of a race to 5 when it can only be one break, etc., and then the game's virtually done.
That's the thing. In this short format, if you win the bull and get an early break, you're halfway to winning the match. You're past halfway to winning the match. And when you have a masterclass like Mansell and Rodriguez had on the doubles against players that had to have those sort of doubles percentages against, you're giving yourself the best possible opportunity to win the game. And that's what they did. They probably showed the rest of the players. If you want to beat players like Luke Humphries and James Wade, you've just got to nail your doubles. Stick with them in the scoring. Give them that cushion they'll probably get in the scoring segment of the match. But if you can if you can hit your doubles, you're in with a shout. And those opening night results set the tone for Group A, really.
Yes, they did indeed. Because what that then transpires to happen, gents, is that Luke Humphries takes on James Wade in what is virtually an elimination match in the second round of fixtures. That is one thing I really do like about the Grand Slam. They try and avoid as fewer dead rubbers by the time we get to the third group game as possible. The winners of the first game play each other in the second one. The losers play, so there's still something to play for. And if you get the right result in that game where both the winners play, then all 4 players are still in the hunt. Like, they are really good at scheduling the fixtures in this group so that nothing is wasted. You get the first ones and everything else is dependent on what's gone before that. However, Luke Humphries' defeat to James Wade was bad enough for Luke to be eliminated on night 2, the defending champ, one of the first players gone from the tournament. Now, we do have to caveat this with the news that his child Rowan has been ill this week. You could almost tell that Luke his head was somewhere else this week, wasn't it? It's not excusing it. He still rocked up on average 97 in the first game, 95 in the second game against James Wade, but he was just missing that edge this weekend. And when you're playing players like James Wade, who, look, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about fair games in a minute, has been out of the group stages 17 times now, was the stat that Sky chucked around. You've got to be on it from the minute go.
Yeah, it is challenging. As a parent, it is incredibly difficult to function normally and apply all of your brain function to whatever the task that you are completing. If there is something that isn't quite right with one of your children, that is just natural. And anybody that says otherwise is he lying or potentially a psychopath? Because that's just a normal human reaction. Again, yeah. Let's be honest. We've seen players, even this evening, play far worse than what we saw from Luke Humphries in that game. We did still see a bit of box office. We saw the 130 checkout. He was still able to deliver some highlight reel moments. And looking at the numbers, it's difficult to see how James won that one. It was wading, for want of a better definition.
Normally, you look at a James Wade performance where he's averaged 103 like he did in the first one and go, well, he's a winning then, isn't he? Because if James Wade goes over the 100 average, it means he's doing something ridiculous on the scoring wise, and that usually is backed up with a solid level of finishing. The complete opposite here happened. That is a typical James Wade, I'm going to beat you when I'm not at my best performance, that puts him within a chance heading into the final day, Carly.
Yeah, and it is very James Wade to just cling on in a group stage major like this one and give himself the best opportunity to make it out of the groups, because he's been there, he's done it. He's frustrating in the way that he just knows how to get the job done. He clearly thought 103 average isn't the way forward this year. Let's hit a bang average mid to high 80s and hope for the best. And just sort of touching on what you were saying about Luke Humphries and his child not being well. I think that shows the level Luke Humphries is at now, where a 97 and a 95 average is considered that there's something not right in his game. Yeah, exactly. It's crazy to think that's the level he's reaching, and that we're talking some of the highest averages we've seen this weekend. And it's like, oh no, he's not quite there. He's not at the races. Something not quite right. But obviously, hopefully, all is well. I hope soon, and he returns to the monster averages we know of him. But yeah, looking at the stats in that game, Wade winning is bonkers, really. As in, is it 8 points difference in the average? And yeah, just James Wade being James Wade.
Further proof that averages do not win darts matches. Elsewhere on night 2 of Group A, Mickey Mansell defeated Roby John Rodriguez by 5 legs to 3. I'm not sure if that qualified him at that moment, but Mickey Mansell is through from Group A. Sterling performance from him after beating James Wade, beating Roby John Rodriguez, putting him on the cusp. It must have done, because Luke Humphries then bashed him 5-1. At this point, we need to chat about Mickey Mansell, I think, because there's going to be plenty of people, and I've seen plenty of comments going, give Mickey the respect he deserves, he's a brilliant player, X, Y, Z. Nobody has ever denied that Mickey Mansell is not capable as a darts player. But relative to the achievements of James Wade and Luke Humphries, Mickey Mansell playing this well in this group, getting out of it at the expense of at least one of those, and by the way, accounting for Gerwyn Price in the final round of the qualifiers for this tournament, are upsets. They are surprises. Like, if you play those matches 100 times, you expect Gerwyn Price to beat Mickey Mansell, you expect James Wade to beat Mickey Mansell, and you expect Luke Humphries to beat Mickey Mansell more often than Mickey Mansell beats them. Like, a fair margin, I think, with the 3 players of their caliber. That's not to write off Mickey Mansell, especially with the state of darts as it is at the moment. Mike Dedecker is a major title winner. Richie Edhouse is a major title winner, and Jermaine Watamaina was a major finalist. Right, that's not to say nobody is capable in this modern day, but Mickey Mansell beating all 3 of those players or outperforming those 3 players in such a short space of time is an upset in darting terms because of what they've done.
Well, of course it is. And again, with the greatest of respect to Mickey Mansell, he's been a ranked player since 2010, and he's never at any point since 2010, in the last 14 years, broken into the top 40. And therefore, I think it's reasonable to suggest that him beating the world number 1 and world champion and a player who's made more quarterfinals than anybody else in the last 6 months, like James Wade, is an upset. Of course it is. Doesn't mean he's not good at darts. It doesn't mean he hasn't played absolutely superbly to do it. But when you look at the record over the last 14 years, and you start to look across, you know, the record that he has in television events, you know, the amount of times he's played in 7 Players' Championship finals. He's won one match in 7 visits. Like he hasn't got a brilliant record on the telly. We've seen him win a couple of times on the Ali Pali stage, and other than that, we've never seen a great deal on the TV from Mickey Mansell. So yeah, him beating James Wade and the world number one is a massive upset, and it's not disrespectful to say that.
Well, he beat James Wade. He outperformed the world number one by out-qualifying him. But today, Luke Humphries did get some sort of revenge on his way out, 101 average from Cool Hand, a 5-1 victory over Mickey Mansell, albeit too late, including sealing it with a 1-3-5. That's the level that we sort of expect from Luke as a base. And I feel like, I don't want to phrase this badly, but should everything be all right at home in the next couple of days / weeks, that's the level we expect from Luke in the next few weeks that makes him a threat to win the big one once again.
Oh, definitely. And I think if, as you say, if all is well, then 101 will be probably one of his poorer games in the Worlds come next month. And I think that's the level he's playing at, where if all is well in Luke Humphries, in the world of Luke Humphries, then he's the man to beat, because he's reaching levels consistently over the last 18 months that I don't think any player can match over that sort of period of time. So and I think in all firing Luke Humphries as a viewer just makes the entertainment even better, and hopefully if he raises his game, he takes a few players with him, and we're in for the Christmas of a lifetime with an amazing world champion on the telly.
Well, if anything, I think it could make him even more dangerous going out in the first round of this, because if all is well and he comes back with, you know, completely focused, like Luke Humphries is a winner, and he has a very, very strong winning mentality. And as much as he might not say it, and I haven't seen his interviews yet, but I would think that this will be digging away somewhere deep inside of him, that he's gone out in the first round as the defending champion, expecting to breeze through that group stage. And I think once he comes back with his head fully focused, I think it makes him even more dangerous for the next 3 months.
Well, let's hear from Luke then, before we do discuss the final group game of Group A. This is the 1-1 world champion.
Yeah, my mind hasn't been on darts this week, unfortunately, but it's unfortunate timing. But you can't, as much as it is something that's played on my mind, it's not. You can't use it too much of an excuse. I just haven't been at my best. You know, maybe a bit of tiredness creeps in. That does happen in darts sometimes. But you know, I'm just proud of the way that I didn't, you know, throw the game and not allow myself to be at my best. I made sure that I was at my best there, because a lot can affect the results from the group. So, you know, James or Ravi could top the group now. So for me, I made sure that I made it hard for whoever was going to top the group, and I didn't, you know, let, you know, an easy ride for Mickey there. I made sure that I worked hard to, you know, to change the outcome, and you know, it was a decent performance, but unfortunately it didn't really matter in the end. Not particularly. If my son would have gone into hospital, I wouldn't have been here, that's for sure. I'd have pulled out. There's no doubt about that. He's slowly but surely getting better. He's not getting worse, but I was doing an exhibition on Thursday, and I had to rush home because he really weren't well, and you know, it was touch and go whether it would be like I'd have been travelling each day to come here, but you know, he's not going into hospital or anything, which is the most important thing, because if he had, I wouldn't have been here. But you know, he's slowly but surely finding his way now, so you know, it's good that, and he's the most important thing. Darts is the most important thing, family is, of course, but I'm glad that he's getting better.
Wise words from the 1-1 world champion. Speedy recovery to Humphries Jr. We do need to talk about the final group game that ended up as a straight shootout in Group A, and James Wade getting the job done against John Rodriguez. Again, numbers aren't really the factor here, both 87 and 86 averages, but if you give James Wade a chance, James Wade is going to find a way, isn't he, Carmen?
Yeah, and in that 5-1 victory, he tops the group, and just, yeah, ironically, his best performance in the group was his only defeat, which sort of probably sums up James Wade perfectly. Really, he just knows how to win and how to make it through the knockouts, and he won't care much about the stats. He'll just regroup, look ahead to the knockouts, and I'll probably just do what he does best, winning with what he'd call an average performance, and just getting on with it, really, isn't it?
Yeah, he does. Straight into it. Look, there's not really much more to say. James Wade tops the group. There are 2 clips in the back end of James Wade, so I'm going to play one then the other. This could be anything.
Lapsy daisy, very lucky. But I disagree with what Wayne Mardell said. Apparently it was all my luck and nothing to do with ability. So yeah, I was just really happy, you know. And me and Luke knew we had a battle on, to be fair. And stabbed my finger on my dog. Bit of blood there, you know. But yeah, it is what it is, and move onwards, you know.
That was after yesterday.
Still in, luckily, and yeah, I think most of my frustration goes towards Mickey Mansell, you know, and not personal, but you know, it was his slow approach to the dartboard and his slow walking back and all that stuff, you know. I felt we'd dealt with that in the late 90s and the early 2000s, but you know, they're still about, and not many of them left, though, thank God.
I feel like maybe that was yesterday as well, but there we have it. James Wade's thoughts on Group A. Still about, doesn't like playing slow players, and disagrees with Wayne Mardell. Some things never change. On to Group B, but before we do, let's dive into the chat room a little bit more. Daniel says, even lads, Rob Kloss was absolutely steaming tonight. Fair play. Well, if they're going to leave him to last, he is definitely going to have a practice, isn't he? What else did we say? Matthew's in. He says, I missed the darts tonight and I can't wait for the highlights on YouTube. Only result I want to know is if the machine progressed tonight. Cheers, boys. Quality content as usual. Well, there you have it, Matthew. James Wade progresses, and not only does he progresses top of Group A. Bob, one of our members, says great comments from Gezi on his Instagram account from his post after Humphries was eliminated yesterday. I agree. These players are absolutely shattered, and this problem is only going to get even worse. Maliki says, hit the like button, everyone. That might be the smartest thing he's ever said in our chat room, but do as he says, press that like button, drop us a follow, subscribe, and all of that. Across all of our social platforms. What else do we have? Wade moaning about Mansel and Phil. No, not Phil. It was moaning about Wayne, not Baz. Matthew says, my dad used to employ James Wade. He was one of his mechanics and used to let him travel to go for tournaments when he was first starting out. He's always been the same funny geezer. He does love to play with his cars, does James. Right, let's move on to Group B then. This is the group that contained Danny Noppert as the seeded player who came through the qualified. Not sure I agree with that part of the criteria, but it is what it is. Martin Schindler, Cameron Menzies, and Bo Greaves were the 4 players that competed in Group B. We started off with a 5-2 win for Danny Noppert over Bo Greaves and a 5-2 win for Cameron Menzies in blistering form over Martin Schindler. Just not the brilliant best we were perhaps hoping for from Bo in the opening round, but Cameron Menzies picking up where he's left off over the last few weeks and taking out arguably his closest rival, and it transpired that way, to get out of that group. If you're going to target one player to pick off, that's Martin Schindler in that situation for Cameron Menzies.
Yeah, I sort of think it was a funny old group, this, because before these games started, I think any outcome was a possible outcome. You know, I think both games could have been an absolute rout either way. Both could have gone to a deciding leg. I just think we didn't know what to. I think all 4 of them are a bit unpredictable. We never quite know which version of them will turn up. But, and I don't mean any disrespect, primarily I mean, you know, in a PDC major on the TV. Obviously, she's incredibly consistent in other parts of her game. But I do think we didn't know what to expect really from either of these games and from any of these players. But then when you look at what happened, it sort of makes complete sense. You know, you go, all right, yeah, that you know. Of course, that's what would happen. But I think that it was a big win for Menzies. I think whilst it did go right down to the wire, and we'll come to that in a moment, the most, and it turns out, the most important thing that happened to Cam Menzies, I think, over the course of these events was getting that win over Martin Schindler. Hugely important victory.
It was Danny Noppert setting his stall out early. I heard a stat from, I think, Doran on commentary earlier, We said Noppert's won 12 of his last 15 games. He's a player that, for the most part of this year, we'd sort of just identified as somebody falling like a stone through the rankings and not doing a great deal. But that is some serious form at the back end of the year, Carlin.
Yeah, and he's sort of done it going under the radar, really, because he's not maybe the flashiest of players, or he's not hitting crazy averages. You don't sort of realise that he's done it, and he just gets on with it, and it's sort of in his own way, really. As in, obviously he's a major winner, and he's climbing the rankings, but this year's probably been his quietest year. But at the important part of the season, he's finding form, and in what was probably a tricky group with the way he got qualified for the Grand Slam, I think he'll be very happy to have won all 3 of his group games and just keep sort of building a bit of momentum, really, going into the business end of the year.
Yes, he did, and we can talk about those games on Sunday now. Danny Noppert with a 5-4 win over Cameron Menzies, whilst Martin Schindler a 5-1 win over Bo Greaves. And this is perhaps where we sort of feel a little bit disappointed with the Bo Greaves level of performance. We know how capable he is. We know how amazing she is. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute, because the interview she gave at the end or post-match gives us a lot of hope of seeing Bo potentially up on stage at PDC events more in the future. Chance missed, Dan. Last Monday, I had Bo getting out of this group. I thought it was one of those where she can go and do some damage because of Menzies' record on the TV and the fact that you get into perhaps sometimes. And Dan Noppert, we've had this perception that isn't having a great 2024, albeit outside of the form that apparently he's got in the last couple of weeks. But is this a chance missed for Bo Greaves?
I think so, and that is probably because, like I said a few minutes ago, before this tournament kicked off, any and all outcomes I think were possible from this group, and because of that, you sort of know that the other 3 could be got at. You know, we know Danny Noppert can be got at. We know Cam Menzies has had, he's played some unbelievable darts. He's a fantastic player, but he has just had a couple of absolute mares on a TV stage. And Martin Schindler we've seen brilliance from him, but we've seen him chuck some absolute stinkers as well. I think the timing wasn't perfect for Bo in that Martin produced the best darts he produced across the 3 matches. He sort of saved it for that, just shy of 100 average, 50% on his doubles. That's gonna do well in most of these games. Certainly the way everybody's playing at the minute. Obviously, Shindy won the ball, so he went off first as well, which makes that an even bigger mountain to climb for Bo. But yeah, I think you could run this again and get a completely different outcome from this group.
Yeah, I completely agree. Right, let's hear from Bo. She did go on to win her final group game 5-1 over Cameron Menzies in some style. And this is what the reigning 2-time Women's World Champion had to say.
Yeah, definitely. I think I need to start pushing myself, I think, to get better. Do you know what I mean? I think I've got a bit stale just doing what I'm doing. So I definitely want to look into 2025 as doing more stuff and just trying to play better and get more consistent overall, because yeah, I've just been very inconsistent this whole tournament. So but yeah, I know what needs to be done, so yeah, I'm sort of ready for that part of it.
You touched on getting stale. Does that mean things like Challenge Tour, Development Tour, and going and playing against the men more often? Because with the greatest of respects, the other women, that you're bashing them up on a regular basis at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe. I think I just know I need to start playing different people and obviously start pushing myself. I'm very stubborn in what I decide to play in and stuff, and it would benefit me if I was a bit more just open to playing different stuff and that. And yeah, that is definitely a possibility for me saying. And it's not the women's fault. It's just I want to be better. I want to be a better dart player than I am now. And honestly, I want to be more comfortable on the stage. And it's hard to get up there and just play there and then when you're not used to playing. Obviously, all the top players. It's difficult. Yeah, absolutely. It's a shame they make you choose. I don't understand that. I don't know why they do it. I think it's stupid. But I would love to. Do you know what I mean? I don't think I wouldn't go on and win Ali Pali. I'd give it a good crack and see if I played well. But ultimately, I want to be a ladies' world champion, and hopefully, I can do that again in December time.
I think that's one of the best interviews she's given in a long, long time. There seems to have been a little bit of growing up in the last few weeks and months, perhaps from Bo, who's always been quite stubborn and saying she doesn't want to be in that environment. But actually, the realization that there is more in the tank from Bo, there is that level that she can go and compete, and perhaps she needs to put herself in that environment to go and prove that, or not even prove that. Like, she talks about consistency an awful lot in her game, and the only way that you become more consistent is putting yourself in that environment where you want to perform more often.
And I think she's shown that this weekend, really, in the way that her best performance came tonight. Obviously, she got the win, but in terms of average and everything, so she's got more familiar with the stage, and she's got more familiar with the surroundings, and she's, to use a better word, she's battered Cameron Menzies tonight and deserved to win. And I think as well, obviously, I'd imagine being crowned ladies world champion for the third time must be very, very appealing. But the reality of it is, financially, she'd be almost better off being at Ali Pali and losing the second round. But if she wants to sort of push herself and test herself, playing a better caliber of opponent will make that happen.
Yeah, indeed. And elsewhere in the group, Cameron Menzies' defeat to Bo Greaves put him on the cusp of elimination. Not eliminated, on the cusp of elimination, a point I had to make on our socials earlier. Needing a big, big favour from Danny Noppert. Now, look, you've clearly all seen the action. You're here to get the reaction. I think this tells you what happens. From Fat Boy did a thing the last couple of weeks to now changing his photo to Cameron to Danny Noppert.
He's got away with murder, hasn't he?
He has got away with murder. Martin Schindler's missed 4 darts to qualify. He only needed 3 legs. Danny Noppert's played an absolute blinder, averaging 106. Martin Schindler has averaged 109 and missed 4 qualification darts, and Cameron Menzies has snuck in to the knockout round of the Grand Slam of darts. Now, his reward for that is to play James Wade in the knockout. So I'm not really sure if that is a reward or not. Whatever happens on that stage is going to be completely mental. But Menzies does progress with the imperious Danny Noppert. We said this is a bit of a missed opportunity for Bo Greaves. Are we saying the same for Martin Schindler, who has been Germany's big hope for a while now? We haven't seen the same level from Clemens. Max Hopp is, distant memories almost already. It's been a long while since we've seen anything of note from him. This is a missed opportunity in this group for Martin Schindler, as well as Bo Greaves that we've spoken about already, Karen.
Yeah, definitely. And I think after the year Martin Schindler would have had, he'd have hoped that building up to Ali Pali, you'd have had a good run in a few of these big tournaments. But it felt like the pressure got to him a bit. I think it's hard when you only need to win 3 legs or X amount of legs. If you had to win the game, he probably goes on and wins that game. But because in the back of his mind, he's like, right, 3 is the magic number. I think getting to that number is harder sometimes than over the winning line, because not that you over-relax, but you think, right, I don't have to win this leg, I can win the next. But all of a sudden, you tell yourself that too many times and you lose the game. But obviously, going out with 109 average is horrible, and I do feel for him there. But obviously, Menzies deserves a bit of luck as well. I feel like he's one of those players who's probably done enough to get out of this group, and whilst Schindler missed opportunity, hopefully Menzies takes advantage of that and gives James Wade a good old battle in the next round.
But I think we'd be saying exactly the same thing if it happened the other way around as well. If Schindler had got that extra leg and gone through, we'd probably be saying, well, Cam Menzies has gone out by 1 leg. is it a missed opportunity for him being beat 5-1 and not holding one more leg of darts against Bo? And we'd be having exactly the same conversation the other way around. It is just sometimes the nature of the way that these small round robin groups work, especially with short formats. You haven't got huge, big leg differences. It's often just going to come down to one leg here and there, or what's happened when they've actually played, or when they've had the direct encounter and who's won that. But it is just how this tournament works a lot of the time.
Yes, it is. Right, on to Group C. And again, a really, really interesting one, this, that contained Rob Cross, Peter Wright, Martin Lukeman, and Leonard Gates. And once again, we have a shock group winner, Martin Lukeman smash, completing the card, if you like, to coin a phrase from the Modus Super Series. The players to depart, Peter Wright and Leonard Gates. Rob Cross sneaking through at the end of this. I was going to say early this evening. It wasn't that much early this evening because they were the final game on. We start this group on Saturday, as always. Rob Cross with a 5-2 win over Leonard Gates. Martin Lukeman, who started the show, 5-0 victory over Peter Wright. Smash looks brilliant right now, Dan.
Yeah, and there's an awful lot being made of Peter Wright's form and the level that Peter Wright played, but if I'm honest, I just think that focus is a bit unfair on Martin Lukeman, because he has played some absolutely superb darts over the last few days, and it got off to a fantastic start. Again, 71% on the doubles, 5 out of 7, like an amazing performance. He's averaged a ton. That is going to win virtually every game in this tournament so far, barring one against Mickey Mansel. Like that form mathematically gets you virtually over the line. And if you're going to play that well and your opponent is not going to be able to get a dart at a double, no, that Peter Wright didn't get an attempt at a double in that match. Just one-way traffic, wasn't it? But I think that more light needs to be shined upon how well Martin Lukeman played, not just Peter Wright threw a stinker, which seems to be the narrative that we're hearing a lot.
I'll put it this way. I wasn't following Peter Wright around my head shouting, Peter Wright, was I? He doesn't get that accolade right now. Martin Lukeman gets that accolade because the man is brilliant. I'm going to dive in the chat room again quickly just to say hello to a few people. Aki Balboa's in. Hope you are well, pal. Talking about injuries in darts, yes, it is possible. Is the rumours going around true you hit a 9-darter? No. I refed 6 of them, but I've never hit one. So back to the point of view that if both positive seems a bit more willing to potentially do a bit more outside the women's game. Maybe that win showed that she belongs to that level realistically. Where do you think she would find her ranking at over a 2-year process? It's hard to know. Depends how she applies herself. If she has a dip and gets behind it, it could be 70s, 80s, and it can spiral. Lisa Ashton gave it a good crack, but never really managed to breach the 64 from memory. Her A game is fantastic, but her B game is there for the taking. We've seen that in what we've just said is a missed opportunity in that group. Jamie Wyman says big missed opportunity for Schindler. Like we said, that could have been a big missed opportunity for everybody. Bob says Snakebite is playing very poor at the minute. Lukeman played brilliant. Agreed. Wright struggled so badly late. He's changing darts mid-game. No consistency. Lukeman's been brilliant. Sneaky outside winner. I mean, darts is very drunk right now, isn't it? Like, go home, darts. You're drunk with all the crazy winners we're getting in the minute. The top 8 players not here. Going Price, Nathan Aspinall, Joe Cullen, Johnny Clayton, all not at the Grand Slam. Like, it's almost unheard of. But can you really say no to Martin Lukeman winning this title right now, given the form he's just produced, +9 in the leg difference against Rob Cross, Leonard Gates, and Peter Wright?
No, you can't. No, as in.
Can't say no to anyone right now, really.
No, but bottom half of the draw might have something to say about it, but there's no reason why he can't make it to the final from that top half of the 8 players left in.
Indeed. Elsewhere in that group, as I said, Rob Cross, a 5-2 win over Leonard Gates. We move on to Sunday's action, and Leonard Gates gets the job done over Peter Wright by 5 legs to 4. Martin Lukeman, a 5-3 winner over Rob Cross. I mean, that just goes to show where Martin Lukeman's playing. He's down some 11 points in the averages and still manages to get the job done against a dogged Rob Cross. 4 points on the board for Lukeman at that stage. But a big shout out to Leonard Gates, who turned down the chance to play at the Seniors Masters this weekend for the Grand Slam. Qualified for both. They unfortunately did clash over Saturday. Just Saturday, because the other part of the Seniors was Friday. There's a good chance Leonard would have gone quite deep in that event. To risk that for a crack at the Grand Slam, where the standard is a bit better, qualified for it outright. He's one that just needs one more little break at PDC level, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's interesting because he didn't. He beat Peter, but he beat far from even a middling Peter Wright. I was a little underwhelmed with Leonard over the course of a couple of days, and on top of that, when I say underwhelmed with him, is that he sort of threw the game that I knew he had, and I think what he needs to do, if we're going to see him more in PDC events on the TV, he's going to have to find another gear. He's going to have to find another level to his game in this environment. You know, we've seen it intermittently elsewhere, but we need to be seeing it more. We need to see that next gear because it's not gonna pan out. You know, he's not going to become a regular on our TV screens, certainly with a PDC badge somewhere on them, if he's going to keep throwing averages in the 80s. And he needs to find that next gear. We know he's got it in the locker, but he just doesn't seem to find it at the right time.
How does he find it at the right time? Because, like you said, we've seen him win Seniors Majors. We've seen him play on the brilliant CDC's tour over the last couple of years. We've seen him win at things like the Super Series. Does Leonard have to get a tour card to achieve his potential, given the fact that he's competing on the Seniors? He's not getting any younger.
No, and that's the thing. I mean, we've seen players who are successful on the Seniors playing Challenge Tour and playing Challenge Tour very well. You know, we've seen it from John Henderson. He's had success as Leonard has had on the Seniors Tour, but is able to maintain the level of darts that he needs to be successful pretty much across the board by playing a high level of competition regularly. I don't think, whilst he does do well and he plays the tour over in America, I don't think Leonard gets or plays a high level of competition regularly enough in order to kick on. I think, and unfortunately, I think that there are players, certainly within the North American tour, who are soon going to pass him, because I think there are players amongst that tour who will be able to kick on and reach that next level. And I think it's almost do or die in the next 12 months for Leonard. In terms of what's left and whether or not he can establish himself, you know, and get onto that PDC tour or show up at more PDC televised events, because I think he's going to be surpassed, and I don't think he's going to qualify through the tour as easily. I think it's going to be a lot harder for him to qualify for things through that tour because the standard of the tour continues to increase.
Correct. Anthony's in from the CDC. Hope you're well, buddy. Joining Jan in a couple of weeks for a show, so keep your eyes out for that one. Bard and Darts. Who are you, Bard and Darts? You could be any number of people hiding behind that one. I've got a few people in mind. Like, I'm not just saying who bloody hell are you, but which one of them are you? First of all, says, should the Grand Slam really be ranked considering qualification criteria? What do you boys think? No, is the short answer. The minute they ranked the Slam, it lost its magic a few years back, especially whilst the BDO were involved. And then he says, does Leonard have potential? I believe we've seen his best game. He's able to thrive in environments where he's favourite. I think he's got potential. I've seen him up close a number of times now. I've wrecked him in Portsmouth. I've seen him on the Seniors Tour, and I've seen him on the CDC Tour. We've seen him qualify for the UK Open. He's not necessarily favourite when he walks into that building in Victoria to qualify earlier this year. I just think he needs a little bit more. He needs to go for it now. because, like I said, he's not getting any younger, needs a tour card for me. And I know that then takes away from the fact he can play in the CDC, but those guys are more than happy to go, we'll create new stars. We are there for these guys to give it a go. Leonard isn't getting any younger. The likes of Spellman has got a couple more years to develop if he really wants to. If he's not ready, if he keeps wanting to take that shot. But Leonard, for me, needs to give it that go to achieve everything that he can achieve. He'll walk away very, very happy with his career, I think, given the seniors majors that he's won. But I think there's more in the tank from Leonard, and we could see him deeper in a PDC major if he's in that environment where he's allowed to go and be more consistent, like we said about Bo Greaves.
Correct.
Where were we? Martin Lukeman beating Rob Cross. Then we move on to this evening. Martin Lukeman getting the job done against Leonard Gates. That did end Leonard's hopes of qualifying, whilst Rob Cross did an absolute job on Peter Wright. 5 legs to 1. Not a great game. Rob Cross looked very flat. Peter Wright looked even worse. Lots of people calling for Peter Wright to maybe consider calling it a day. We've seen glimpses from him. He is falling on the rankings. The counter argument to that is he's won a shed load. He's more than capable. We've seen him go deep this year at the flick of a switch, but we're seeing him flip that switch less and less now, Darwin.
Yeah, and it feels like, yes, you can flick the switch, but the plug's got to be on for the switch to work. And I'm sort of, this weekend, I'm not saying he's looked like a broken man, but I can't imagine anybody 2 or 3 years ago would have said, oh, in a few years, Peter Wright will rock up to the Grand Slam and average low to mid 80s for the 3 group games. It seems that his game has just fallen off the planet, and I know a lot's gone on off the hockey, and he's still tinkering with his dart mid-game, mid-legs, mid-throw, but I don't know. He's in a sticky position now where his career could spiral out of control and potentially do more damage than good. I think the toughest thing for any sportsman is knowing when to call it a day. And depending how the next couple of months go for Peter Wright, it might be time for that conversation, because he's been around the top for so long. I don't think anybody wants to see him end up retiring, having lost his tour card, falling out the top 64. So he seems to have a good team around him. I just hope he does the right decision for him and for his legacy, I guess.
I think what made it a tough watch, a particularly tough watch, is at no point in those 3 games was he competitive. We know we've seen players go through a rough patch where they find a way to lose games, and we've seen it. We've seen loads of players where they get on a bad run and things just don't go their way, and they just keep finding ways, and they get picked at the post, and it doesn't quite work out for them.
Ricky Evans is the prime example of that, nearly missing out on the Players on the World despite having like the second best average.
Yeah, and this is
that's completely different to what we're seeing from Peter Wright right now.
Yeah, we've seen players find ways to lose, snatch defeat from the jaws of victory sometimes. And that isn't what's happening to Peter. No, he's not competing. You start once you've watched 2 legs, you know the result. You might as well go and make a brew because you know what's happening. It's just a matter of time. How many? And it's not how many. It's will Peter be able to hold a couple of legs?
Indeed. Right, let's move on. No, I think there's a Rob Cross clip. We'll listen to this before we move on to Group D.
And it's like the guy's a 2-time world champion. I had a good chat before, and I normally never talk to an opponent before I go on. I'm disciplined, professional. I would always give Pete that time, and I had a good chat with him before I went on. I'm not going to say what was mentioned, but he's not quite there at the minute, and he deserves more. He's given a lot to the game. He gives a lot, and I'm sure that. Well, actually, I hope that he's gonna pick it up and he's gonna keep going and just keep smashing it like he can. I don't think anything's changed. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough, you know. I really like the man, and apart from that, I suppose I like the man, but he's a better dart player and all.
I think there's twofold there. One, there is a recognition of an excellent career up until this point, but when players are almost looking back on your career a little bit for you and saying that you deserve more, perhaps the writing starts to be on the wall a little bit. Not that I'm saying Peter Wright has gone within 6 weeks, whatever. He's got another 18 months on the circuit if he wants to use it, given the amount of prize money he's got and rankings. It's, do you want to go through that if his form is going to stay at the level it's at right now? Anyway, on to Group D, and then we'll get this show wrapped up. I am conscious we've been just under an hour already. If Group H was the group of death in this tournament, Group D wasn't too far behind, given the form of all four players: Richie Edhouse, Ross Smith, Connor Scott, and the number 5 seed, Dave Chisnell. Luke Humphries' exit in this tournament at the group stage is possibly the biggest shock we're going to see at this tournament. Well, it is the biggest shock we're going to see at this tournament. It's possibly one of the biggest shocks we've ever seen at this tournament. But if that wasn't to be this weekend, Dave Chisnell not picking up a single point in Group D, despite it being quite competitive, will be right up there as well. Again, the Yellow Peril, great form coming into this TV event. A couple of people in our chat room saying, is this the time that Chizzy gets over the line in a major? That question that is going to perhaps haunt him for life. And he's finished bottom of this group. That competitive, yes. Difficult, yes. But if you're somebody with Dave Chisnell's standing caliber, ability, and form coming into this, you expect to get out of this group
I didn't pick him to qualify. I did not feel confident in Chisnell getting out of this group. When we did the picks the other day, I just think we've seen, and we've had Richie Edhouse has had an unbelievable year, and it would have just been typical for him to come through. Connor Scott, whilst we didn't see them able to, he couldn't maintain it, he couldn't keep the consistency, but that opening game against Chisnell, that the performance he put in was like one of the performances that we've seen from him all around the country in various different events. And Ross Smith is Ross Smith, and you know, if Chizzy's got anything that can get him over the line when the chips are down, it's that scoring power. And Ross Smith is one of the few players that, if he turns it on, can out 180 Chisnell. And because of that, I thought this was an awful group for Chisnell. I just thought every game in this didn't suit him, and it went a little bit the way that I thought. The only thing is, I thought that Scott would have edged out Smith, certainly after the opening game. But yeah, I think that this was not the tournament. I don't think it was ever going to be the tournament for Chisnell. And if we do see something from him, I don't think it'll be in this environment.
Yeah. To go from, not necessarily by us then, but from others as potential contender, given the absence of some of the other high-profile names, to at 4-0 down in the final group game against Richie Edhouse. If he loses that 5th leg, he has the joint worst record in Grand Slam group history. It's quite a step for a player. We're still waiting to take that next step and finally put his hands on a major trophy with the record that Chisnell has in all of darts.
Yeah, it's quite funny, isn't it, when you sort of look at that group, and Edhouse is when something recently, Ross Smith's playing well. I don't know, was in Chisnell. I think the thing I expected with this group, I didn't expect it to be somebody to win all group games, to be the 6-4-2-0 in the points. I thought they'd take points off each other. But when it came down to it, the others wanted it more. And I'm surprised Chisnell's gone out in such fashion, but I don't think I'm surprised he's gone out. I don't know if he'll ever get his hands on that major. I think there are hungrier players out there now who maintain the level needed to win a major over the course of a major. As in, we've all seen Chisnell storm his way through the first 2 or 3 rounds, get to the quarterfinal, and he he sort of goes to pot and that's the end of that. But this time it's just happened in the group stage before getting to the deeper end of a tournament.
One of the best performances you're ever going to see at Ali Pali against Michael van Gerwen. Like, that was sensational, but like I said, he just doesn't do it often enough. Again, this isn't to take away from anybody else in this group. Like we said, massively competitive. Richie Hadhouse, European champion, 3 from 3, looking brilliant. Plus 10 in the leg difference. He's done a job on basically everybody, Dan.
It's easy to forget, just before I go on to that one, that Dave Chisnall is currently provisional number 4 in the world. And numbers 5, 6, and 7 aren't at this tournament. So there's no great inroads going to be made on him. But yeah, Dave Chisnall currently sits provisionally number 4 in the world, which is wild, really. I think certainly because of the difficulties that we keep seeing him have on TV in these big events. But yeah, Rich Edhouse is just he has been a complete revelation this year. I think, we followed him that early part of the year where he became the specialist, not a specialist, or the specialist in qualifying for European Tour events. He got through, I think, at one point 6 on the bounce, where he just constantly found that game he needed in the qualification events. He's been absolutely superb. And again, it's not just finding ways to win. He's been absolutely dominant in a lot of games. The level that he's reached, the averaging that we've seen from him, the finishing that we've seen, it's just been really, really high-level darts consistently.
We saw really, really high-level darts from Connor Scott, but I guess the issue, Dan, is that it wasn't consistently in this group. He dismantled Dave Chisnall 5-0 in the opening game, 104 average for the sniper. But unable to back it up, losing 5-2 to Richie Edhouse, who was there for the taking with just an 84 average himself, and then beaten 5-0 by Ross Smith tonight. Don't get me wrong, Ross Smith was magnificent this evening. He played beautifully, wrapped it up with an 11-dart leg. Like we said, had the darts, got the break early, 3-0 up with Scott having thrown first once, up against it at that point, kept at arm's length basically for the short race that it was. Connor walks off a little bit disappointed, but Torkard secured. This would have been a chance to just feel out this environment again, I guess.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because I think because we've seen so much from Connor over the last year and we've seen him play so well, I don't know whether sometimes we go, only speak personally, is that, I almost expect too much from him. It's very easy to remember that, or it's difficult, or it's easy for me to forget that whilst he's secured a tour card, he hasn't got one. He hasn't been playing on these tour events. He's not, he's actually been playing them. He isn't a tour carded player. We shouldn't be expecting him to bash up Ross Smith. We shouldn't. We shouldn't be expecting him to beat major title winners in TV majors. We just shouldn't. And he beat Chisnall, and then he come up short a couple of times. But yeah, I don't think it's a big concern. I think we'll see an awful lot more of Connor. We'll see a lot of him next year. He will play on these stages an awful lot more. We're going to see a hell of a lot more of him, I think, than the last time he had his card, where we didn't see him on the TV a great deal. I think we'll see him on the television a lot more. I think he'll be qualifying for a lot more. I think he'll end up on Euro Tours a lot more. So I think it's just like anything, it's another experience, and hopefully he can learn from it and move on.
And the last word of this group goes to Ross Smith. Like we said, beaten by Rich Edhouse to open, 5-2 win over Dave Chisnall, and then that 5-0 win over Connor Scott, securing his place through this group in second. And he was sort of the first strange winner we got, if you like, of a major in the last couple of years. We saw Danny Knopp at the UK Open, yes, but Ross winning that European Championship sort of opened the door for all of these Mike De Decker and Richie Edhouse tournament wins, etc. And are we at the point where we expect more from Ross Smith as well now? There was talk of potential Premier League last year, didn't quite get there, but did that get to him a little bit when he's launching T-shirts into the crowd as part of his walk-on, etc.? Do we just want Ross Smith to play darts like Ross Smith did tonight, and the Premier League and the rest will sort itself out?
100%. I think that's all he needs to do is concentrate on throwing those 3 wonderful arrows from 7'9¼ at a dartboard. Everything else will happen for him. I think he's a multiple major winner in the making. He just needs to focus on his darts and let them do the talking, because when he is playing at his best, he is a very, very hard player to beat and very, very competitive. I don't think he's yet at the level where he's competing with the top boys, but he's certainly in that sort of, if you next group of players who are knocking on the door. And I think if he just continues concentrating on his darts, he will close that gap to the top group and eventually join them, because I think he's got that game in him. He just needs to produce it time after time after time.
He does. Right, let's hear it from... Nope, that's available in full on our YouTube channel. The clip is not in our back end. I was convinced it was there, but perhaps not. So that is all we have time for this evening. That's been our review of groups A to D so far at the Grand Slam of Darts. We'll be back tomorrow night for the wrap-up of groups E, F, G, and H. Then we'll look ahead to the knockout stages as well. Apologies that we weren't here over the weekend, but as we said earlier, myself and Dan were up in Sunderland for the seniors. Barzy's been here, there, and everywhere. Chat room, you've all been fantastic. Thanks for joining us this evening. Dan for getting out of his deathbed. Carwyn as well for joining us with his dial-up internet. We appreciate both of you for helping us along this evening. As I said, we'll be back tomorrow. Every interview from all the winners throughout the weekend and moving forward this week at the Grand Slam of Darts will be available in full on our YouTube channel. And if you aren't already, make sure you're connected with us on all of our social platforms, Facebook, X, or Twitter. Dan's the only one that ever calls it X because he's trying to be hip like the millennials. Instagram, we're on Threads, we're on TikTok, we're on YouTube. You know what to do. Just go find us, follow us, subscribe to us, like us, and drop a comment and get involved on socials, and we'll continue the conversation wherever you wish. But as I said, thanks for joining us this evening for the Fallout Bar. I've been Jack Darwood. We'll speak to you all very, very soon.